Hello everyone, I'm Rina, and this is my Beginner Proxies Guide, aka the guide to getting started in Zenless Zone Zero. So, to start off, I just want to point out that this guide is meant for people who are going to be completely new to the game. I'm going to mostly be drawing off of information that I was able to glean from official sources such as the Twitter, as well as some of my own experiences having played in the last closed beta test. I will not cover leaked information though, so I cannot speak on anything like character power or the like. Hopefully, though, this will help you get a good start. So to start off, there's a couple of things I'm not going to cover. Rerolling is going to be the first one. Hoyoverse games tend to have really long reroll periods, so I think generally it's not worth the effort. Second is character tiers. Again, I will not speak on leaked info, so I cannot and will not talk about things like character stats. And not to mention, both of these things are also things that I feel run a little bit counter to my own kind of philosophy in going into this guide, which is that we should learn to work with what we get. So, with that in mind, let's continue. So, to start off the game, you'll pretty much open it up and you'll be thrown straight into some cutscenes, and eventually you'll get into the tutorials. You'll be able to mess around with the combat system a little bit, and then at a certain point you'll be able to pick either to play as the male or the female protagonist. Note, these are not playable characters like the Trailblazer or the Traveler in Genshin and Honkai Star Rail. And additionally, they have set names. You will, however, later be able to pick an account name for yourself that your friends can find you by, so make sure that you pick a good one when you hit that point. And of course, you can't switch any of these things after you set them, so be sure that you're picking what you want to pick. So as far as the game goes, it pretty much is a central hub area from which you can then embark on your quests. The central hub area is the area known as 6th Street. It contains pretty much everything that you're going to need to help build your characters and get ready for your battles. If you've played Monster Hunter at all, it pretty much operates like that. So, to start off, we've got Random Play. Random Play is basically the video store that our protagonists own, and it's pretty much your main hub area. The HDD is their computer, and it's the launching point for pretty much all the combat and exploration missions. This includes things like story quests, side quests, and the like, as well as some of the more advanced game modes. The VR training is another thing which you will use to enter modes that can be used to farm for resources to build your agents. Store management is a little kind of a management minigame where you can set up the video store business and get a little bit of extra cash to work with. And then it also contains the daily errands book. This basically just will give you a series of small daily tasks you can do to get a small reward, including the premium currency, which is polychromes. Outside, there is a noodle shop, a coffee shop, and the drive disc store. The noodle shop, you can use that to get in-combat buffs. The coffee shop will give you some extra energy to work with for the VR training system. And the drive disc store is where you will manage a piece of equipment that I will explain later. There's also some other things. There's a workshop immediately right next to the video store where you can upgrade bang boos. They're like the little rabbit robots, and you can actually bring some of them into combat. The ones that you bring into combat will be upgraded at the workshop. The arcade contains a bunch of little mini games for the most part, and it could be the hub for some events depending on how they want to run those. And the most important part about this is that each one of those little arcade games actually has their own achievements list where you can get polychromes for yourself. The gadget store I didn't make too much use of, but it's where you can buy B and A rank W engines. These are the game's weapons, so to speak. And to me, it kind of feels like it's more there for a desperation measure or an I just really need to give someone something measure, but it's there. It's a nice fallback. There's a general store that's run by 3 Lil Bang Boos that you can also buy kind of a randomly rotating stock of items. It has and will save you a lot of VR training runs in the long run. It was very helpful. The Trash Can Sage is It's a weird thing. But basically, this is a place that you can turn in a special exploration resource known as HIA commemorative coins, which you can trade for some rare items such as extra videos to put in the video store. And then lastly, I'm calling him the paint can guy. There's an NPC in one of the back alleys who is going to ask you about finding him some paint cans. You can earn these through side quests, and when you turn them into him, you'll get some extra rewards to work with. There's actually similar NPCs found in other areas, but they'll be using a different resource. They don't all use the paint cans. Next up, the schedule system. So the hub is operating kind of on a schedule. Don't worry. If you've played Persona, you're not dealing with something nearly that complicated. So the schedule is split into 4 time blocks. You've got morning, afternoon, evening, and night. For the most part, the importance of this pretty much comes out to the fact that certain shops and certain side quests will only become available at certain parts of the day. In addition to that, agents might want to hang out with you, and you'll need to block out specific times for that. It's a very forgiving system, so don't worry if you miss something. It's not like they're gonna just abandon you because you've missed it. You can try again. Any kind of major activity like going on a combat quest, doing a VR training block, or hanging out with an agent is going to advance the day by 1 time block. And there's also a couch in the protagonist's room which you can use to manually skip 1 time block per day. As a warning, there's 2 things I want to point out. First of all, most of the shops, including the noodle shop, the drive disc shop, and the coffee shop, will be closed in the night block. You cannot access them at this time. This is important because you can run into story quests, especially on the side, which can end up locking you into an immersive mode, which will potentially lock you into nighttime and prevent you from using any of those facilities. On to gameplay modes. So I mentioned that there's 2 sorts of like gameplay hub or like launch points, and this is where I'll explain those. So out of the HDD is what I refer to as the sort of the main game modes. These are your story quest missions, your side quest missions, and the majority of the combat. Story commissions, obviously story. Combat commissions and exploration commissions are pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. You'll be either focusing on combat or exploring the TV mode map. Rally commissions are basically long-form combat missions which you can get extra rewards from on a weekly basis. From my time in the beta, I will warn you, these are hard. Like 1 world level up levels of hard. They may have adjusted this, but I'm not entirely sure. Hollow Zero is a weekly roguelike mode that you will use that will combine a lot of the TV mode exploration and combat. If you've played Honkai Star Rail, it's very much like the simulated universe mode. I don't know if there's any equivalent for Genshin. And then lastly is the Shiyu defense. This is pretty much the endgame mode. This will throw waves of enemies at you and ask you to defeat them as quickly as you can. You can get some big polychrome rewards if you do this well enough, and if you play Genshin, this will feel familiar because you've probably done Spiral Abyss. For the VR device, I will say this much. The fact that all of these things are located in just 1 hub is extremely convenient. So, you've got 4 major categories. Combat simulation is intended for farming materials, and you are actually allowed to customize this to an extent, where you can pick and choose different like enemy wave compositions to adjust the rewards that you'll get per run. Driver validation is the mode where you'll farm the drive discs, and again, I will explain this later as it's less difficult and more complicated. Expert challenge will put you up against mini boss level enemies for items that you need to raise agent skills to higher levels, and then the reckless challenge will put you up against major story bosses, which you have to use to max out your agent skills. Note, you can only claim these rewards 3 times per week. Fortunately, you can pick what those 3 are. It's more like Echoes of War in Star Rail than it is Genshin's Trounce domain system. And just before I move on to other things, you may have heard of the TV mode. It was a contentious part of the game because a lot of people felt like it was too, especially in the earlier betas, people felt like it took up too much of the time. And based on my own observations, it kind of did. But as of the last beta test, they definitely shortened the amount of time. So I don't think it's too intrusive now. It's a pretty good balance between combat and being able to do the exploration puzzles. And I personally like it. Proxy levels. So as you play through the game, you're going to earn some experience, and this is basically going to be your account level. It pretty much is just a mark of how much you've played. But at the same time, at certain thresholds of your proxy level, you'll be able to do something known as a promotion mission. When you promote, all enemies within the HDD missions will get stronger. You'll get an extra difficulty level in the VR device missions, and most importantly, you'll be able to level up your agents and your W engines further than what you could previously. That being said, I do want to give this little warning here. Promotions do cause a notable spike in enemy strength, so you might want to consider clearing anything weekly before you promote. Fortunately, though, if the VR device gets a little too difficult, you can kick that level down and be able to just continue making your builds and to catch up. They're not going to leave you kind of dead in the water at any point. All right, now for the fun part, combat. This is going to be a high-level overview. The specifics are much better explained and learned in an actual tutorial setting. So I'll just explain kind of basics. So every character basically has 4 basic moves. Their basic attack, a dodge, and a dodge counter, a special attack, and an ultimate. Dodge counters are activated when you dodge an attack at the right time and then hit the attack button. Special attacks can be upgraded to what is known as an EX special attack when your character builds up enough energy through basic attacking or their dodge counters. And then ultimates operate off of a shared resource between all 3 squad members, known as decibel meter. When you pop an ultimate, that's it for the entire squad. You can't chain together ultimates because they are not independent. Next up is the daze system. Every enemy has a daze meter. If you have played something like, maybe like Sekiro or any of I think maybe some of the God of War games had a system like this, at least the newer ones. Basically, the more you hit something, the more this daze meter builds. And when that daze meter maxes out, the enemy gets stunned and dizzied, and you get to hit them really, really hard for free. It kind of creates a bit of a gameplay loop where you're going to be aiming to daze, do your damage, let them recover, and then build up daze again. So it's kind of like a 2-phase sort of system as far as combat goes. Chain skills and perfect swaps. Chain skills are basically skills that will proc based on certain actions taken by your current on-field character that will let another character quick swap in with either a follow-up attack or as a counter attack to kind of basically save your character who is your current on-field character who might have gotten knocked back. Additionally, using the same button, you can use this to activate something known as a perfect swap. So sometimes bosses will occasionally attack with a move that has a yellow circle associated with it. If you swap at any point during that yellow circle, your next character will swap in and either do a parry or an enhanced dodge, either giving you a lot of daze buildup or giving you a time slow where you can kind of just do your own thing for a while. This does require something known as assist points, which are gained by activating chain skills. If you do not have enough assist points, that circle's going to turn red and you should dodge instead. Elements and status anomalies. So there are 5, I'm going to call them elements because if I start saying damage types, that's going to be a little bit more, that's going to start confusing people. But elements are, the reason I say damage types are going to confuse people is because there's also what we refer to as damage types such as slash, pierce, and I think blunt. But that's less important than what the elements will do. So as far as it goes, there's 5 elements. There's physical, electric, ice, fire, and ether. Every single element comes with its own associated status effect. Physical is not just the, well, we couldn't figure something else out element. They refer to these status effects as status anomalies, and they're built up by doing certain elemental damage types over a long period of time. So physical will inflict the assault debuff, which, as you can see, increases day's duration. Electric will cause shock, which immobilizes mechanical enemies and causes targets to take extra electric damage. Fire causes burn, which just causes the damage over time and also stops organic enemies from moving. Ice just has shatter, and freeze, which pretty much just stops all targets and actually increases crit damage that they take. And ether has corruption, which is probably the most underwhelming because it just increases more incoming ether damage as far as I know. And then there's one last effect, which is disorder. This activates when you've got one status effect active, and then you manage to proc another one while that first one is active. This causes huge damage and days buildup, and you still get the benefits of the new status effect. Lastly is combat bang boos. They're kind of a very small part of what your team is going to be. Basically, for the most part, they'll just be on hand and on field to provide extra damage of their specific element, or they can provide support such as giving you extra energy or giving you a very, very minor heal to work with. Additionally, when you get to certain large chain attack sequences, they'll be an option as well, and they pretty much just give you a free 4th attack during that sequence. Now, to talk about the thing that we all play gacha games for, the playable characters. So as far as it goes, we've got our agents our playable characters are referred to as agents. We've got the A rank and we've got the S rank. If you're familiar with other gacha games, this is pretty much the difference between your 4 stars and your 5 stars. And they are split up into 5 different roles, which will help with the team building. Damage, exactly what it says on the tin. They're gonna hit things really hard. Stun characters are meant to build up that daze meter that was previously mentioned, and they excel at this. They might be able to operate as a sub DPS depending on your team compositions, but that's a little situational. So defense characters are characters that are generally, well, we've only got one defense character that we know of, and his thing is shielding and counterattacks. So for the most part, I'm going to extrapolate that they'll probably be largely depending on those counterattack and team support options. Support tends to be mostly offensive support or other things that don't really fit elsewhere, such as crowd control abilities. And then Anomaly is entirely built around trying to maximize how much they can inflict status effects quickly and possibly more painfully than everyone else. Additionally, every agent will have one of their own elements, which will factor into the team building, which I will discuss later. So when you're building up your agents, you're going to be dealing with 5 particular factors. Agent level is the most straightforward. Higher level, higher stats. Talents are what you will get from drawing the agent again out of the gacha, and these are generally high investment luxuries. They might unlock some more like extra mechanical things, but they're generally not required to do well with them. W engines are what we're going to refer to as the weapon. It basically is just a big stat stick. And they have their own leveling and promotion system very similar to agents, and they use a different material as well. So you'll have to farm their levels pretty much like agent levels are. In addition to that, every S rank agent will have an S rank W engine that is very specifically meant to work for them. Drive discs are an auxiliary equipment that you can farm from the VR device. And it's probably the most complex part of agent building, so I have a couple of extra slides after this one specifically dedicated to talking about that. And then finally, skill levels. Basically, these are the levels that you'll increase to increase agents' multipliers on basic attacks, specials, counters, and ultimate skills. So to talk drive disks, so if you're coming from Genshin or Star Rail, think artifacts and relics. And all the pain of farming that comes with it. Oh god. Yeah, these are randomized farmable pieces of auxiliary equipment, and they have three major things that you need to worry about. The rarity, which determines their enhancement cap, the set that they're a part of, which will naturally determine the set bonus, and their slot number, which basically determines their position. Unlike the relics of Star Rail and the artifacts of Genshin, the drive disks all look the same. You're going to have to actually read their tooltips. You're actually going to have to read their tooltips to understand which slot they go into. Additionally, though, the slot will determine what pool it can draw the main stats from. For instance, I think it was slot 4 that pretty much plays the role of the goblets in Genshin, where it's things like elemental stat increases or the like. And then, as I mentioned before, getting more drive disks is found in driver validation, which you can just get them as a direct drop, or you can get some materials which you can use to upgrade the disks or make new ones. Quick bit of information that has been held up for Genshin and Star Rail: don't farm drive disks hard until you can start using S rank ones. B and A rank disks have very short lifespans and will be very quickly replaced before anything else. So, as we will probably say, just use the copium sets that you're able to scrape together until you can farm the actual good stuff. You don't want to invest too much in those at the beginning. So, to talk a little bit about the drive disks, so you've got main stat, as I mentioned, main stats and substats. Main stats are determined by the slot number, and they will draw from a pool based on the slots. Sorry, I just realized I repeated myself. The other thing about that is this is a stable stat. Nothing will change about it, and it will always increase as the enhancement levels go up. Substats, on the other hand, will be randomly rolled and should increase every 4 or so enhancement levels. The thing is, it's going to pick a random one. This is something that this is the reason that you're going to have to farm these over time, because substats can be notoriously difficult to get good ones of. But don't worry too hard about it until you're looking at endgame stuff. If you've got a good main stat and you've got your good sets, worry about that first. And then as far as the set bonuses go, since every agent can equip 6 discs, and there are 4 set bonuses and 2 set bonuses, naturally, your main thing is that you're going to want to give your agent a 4 disc bonus to unlock whatever mechanic it might have that is relevant to them, and then you'll want to have a relevant 2 set bonus to increase whatever relevant stat they might have. Generally speaking, each role is going to want to focus on different main stats, and this is a generalized thing though, so this may not always hold and can be subject to change based on agent, but as a sort of general guideline, damage will want crit rate and crit damage as well as attack. Defense characters will naturally want defense. Stun characters will want to focus on something known as impact. Supports can change a lot. I think when I looked between 3 supports, they all had different stats to worry about. So you're going to have to check your support agents and pick the appropriate main stats. And then Anomaly will want to work on 2 things, which is Anomaly Mastery, which is build rate, and Proficiency, which is the damage that comes when that actually procs. Now on to team building. So I have 2 basic guidelines for team building. Number 1 is you don't want to double up on rolls. When you have a team, and when you're kind of operating off of this stun, do damage loop, if you have agents with redundant roles, you're going to be dealing with cases where you have 2 agents trying to compete for the same part of that rotation, and it's going to be a little awkward to deal with. Additionally, there's something known as additional abilities. Additional abilities are a special passive bonus that pops up whenever an agent is paired with a teammate that either shares their element or their affiliation. As far as it goes, the most basic team setup and the one that I personally felt was right is kind of feels like the classic MMO setup where you have a stun character to deal with the daze bar, then a damage character and a support character to deal with the stun window. And as a quick note, when you are looking into advanced content, especially shield defense, you are going to need 2 teams. However, I would definitely say make sure that you have one team serviceable before you focus on a second one. Don't try to build 2 teams at once. You're going to end up kind of squeezing your resources a little bit too tightly. That being said, naturally speaking, you'll probably also build a lot of your characters over time, so there's nothing. This is just, again, this is like early game, kind of like try to focus your resources. So let's cover the A-rank agents that we'll be dealing with early on because they are very, very accessible and you'll probably be making pretty heavy use of them early on. I don't go into too much detail about them, but I'll give you an idea of what they all do. So to start off with our Cunning Hares, Nekomata, an ether support who specializes mostly in CC damage, mostly in CC because she has the only major vacuum effect in the game at this time. And she's probably going to be... You're probably going to wish you had 2 of her, honestly. And Damara is Electric Stun. She's your first stun character. Very straightforward to play. Just hit things. Generally speaking, I found her very reliable in the closed beta test. Billy Kid is physical damage. Fitting to the fact that he's bringing the 2 guns. Safe, long-range damage dealing with surprisingly good wide AoE. The thing is, though, I did feel his damage output was a little low, but again, I'm not going to comment too much on that specifically. Next up, Belobog Heavy Industries. You've got Anton Ivanov. Electric damage character, does a lot of good single target damage, but as far as my experience went, he needs to stand still for very, very long periods of time, so it can be a little dangerous. Ben Bigger, the Bear Man. No, like literally a bear. Fire defense and the only defense character that we have at this time. Really focused on using counterattacks and does pretty good fire damage when he can get those counterattacks off, but there is something to know that he has a slower run speed and a much, much shorter dodge than the rest of the cast. It is very hard to dodge things positionally with him. From Victoria Housekeeping Service, we have Corin Wicks. Physical damage, and she is the free character that they put in the pre-reg rewards. So everyone will get her. Good single target physical damage and some decent AoE, but like Anton, she needs to stay stationary for a long time because she needs to maximize how long that saw is just buzzing into something. Section 6 includes Sokaku as her A rank. She's an ice support and she gains transferable attack buffs. And in particular, she's really, really good at supporting ice characters because her additional ability is very specific to ice. And then lastly is a newer faction that we've been seeing more recently, which is the Sons of Caledon. Ironically, not containing any sons so far. First, we've got Lucy. Fire support, she kind of summons some little extra help on the field, and she can apparently expend them to give the rest of the team an attack buff. And then Piper is a physical anomaly. She's really, really focused on getting her attacks going to build up what is known as power stacks, and which she can use to enhance her ability to build up assault. Additionally, she's capable of buffing team damage output, which is kind of weird for an anomaly character. But then again, we only have 2, so we'll see. Now, I'll talk standard S-rank agents because these 6 are probably going to be one of your first S-rank characters. And especially because of the fact that there is a beginner banner, which will guarantee you one of them at around 50 pulls. So it'll be easy to get one of these 6 early on. And I want to kind of talk about how you can build around whichever one you get. So what I've made are what I'm going to call quick start teams, which will use 2 other A rank agents specifically and more specific, as well as try to maintain additional ability access for everybody. Remember, that's the thing that requires either an element match or a faction match. These are all just suggestions, and if the gacha luck allows, or you're able to pay your way through, feel free to experiment with other teams. So I'm going to start off by talking about Grace Howard here. So she's an electric anomaly character associated with Belobog Heavy Industries. Her whole thing is that she applies crap tons of shock at long distances. Really, really good against mechanical enemies. Her quick start teams, I have 2 of them that follow my rules and 1 that kind of doesn't because I need to experiment with that one, and I'll explain that a little later. So Anby and Anton will give you a stun and a damage character, and all 3 of them are electric. This will be really, really good for taking out mechanical bosses in particular, but it might suffer a little bit on the AoE. Anby and Nicole will work as well. Grace matches with Anby's electric, and Anby and Nicole are both part of the Cunning Hares. They only need 1 other character to match one of those criteria for everyone to access their additional abilities. Grace's attacks are pretty wide and sweeping, and she throws grenades at things, so combining that with Nicole's Black Hole CC, you can do a lot of damage to a lot of enemies very quickly. The last team is one that I'm going to have to experiment with in full release, and this is Piper and Anton. You are going to have bonuses on Anton and Grace because they're both from Belobog and because they're both electric, but Piper is going to be left out because she's a physical anomaly. This is part of a team setup which I'm theorizing might be good enough to make up for that lack of ability, but it basically is going to focus on constantly cycling between Grace's shock and Piper's assault to just blow things up with constant disorder procs. Next up is Koleda. She's a stun character, fire. Also with Belobog, as the last name would suggest. A lot of the time, her kit is basically centered around using some of her special abilities to allow her basic attacks to hit a lot harder in both damage and stun potential. Her quick start team is pretty much is almost like locked to Ben and Anton because they pretty much will give you the stun damage support trinity, but you just have a defense replacing the support. For the most part, the support is going to be the replaceable teammate. But yeah. Notably though, Ben kind of acts as a pseudo support for Koleda because he actually manages to enhance a lot of Koleda's moves. And just to really hammer that home, they have special coordinated attack animations. Like, the ultimate animation changes a lot. Next is Nekomata. She's a physical damage character associated with the Cunning Hares. All I'll say is this. She attacks very quickly, and be prepared to give your thumbs a workout. She's kind of like the ninja character. She's kind of like a ninja character with all the high speed attacking, and more specifically, being able to, if you get her W engine, do more damage from the back, and also gaining attack buffs from landing dodge counters. Very fast, lots of movement, much cat, yes. Her quick start teams are going to be one of these 2. Anby and Nicole pretty much are like a canonical team to work with. They're all part of the Cunning Hares. And this is I use this team the most in the CBT, largely because of the fact that this was the team I had to work with most. Versatile team. Very good AoE between Nicole and Nicole CC and Nekomata having a lot of like speedy dash around attack moves. It just generally worked pretty well, and it was solid and reliable. It wasn't going to take home any rewards for flashiness though. And then Lucy and Piper are actually ones that I'm going to possibly recommend on account of the fact that Nekomata can benefit from Piper being a physical character. And then Lucy will work with Piper due to being in the same faction. This is going to be an unusual team. You are not going to have much in the way of stun buildup, and you're pretty much going to be focusing almost entirely on brute forcing damage with Nekomata. As a special note, Nekomata's normal attack strings actually involve some kind of like cross-throughs or pass-throughs that will work on smaller enemies. You can get to backs easily, but it will also mess up your positioning, so you might need to get into the habit of dodge canceling through your normal attack strings to prevent this from happening. It's not as hard as it's... I know it sounds hard, it's not hard. You just hit the dodge button on like the third hit or something, and then you'll just stay in front of... You'll stay where you were attacking from. Soldier 11. So she's a fire and damage type character, and she's the only character out of the OBOLS squad that we know of so far. I haven't seen anything from the Twitter yet, so she might have some rough times with trying to build teams because she can't use faction matches. She's a damage character largely centered around using her EX special, chain attack, or ultimate to set her sword on fire for a couple seconds. Good burn application, high damage, but she kind of is... But it'll be a very basic playstyle, which for some players will probably be good because it means that you don't have to think too much, and you can focus more on the battle at hand. When I was first writing this guide, it was before Piper and Lucy were introduced, so I was like, oh no, I think she might have the only team where I'm going to have to break the rules. But fortunately, those two came in, and now Soldier 11 has a team. So Soldier 11 will be able to use Lucy's support, and more specifically, because she has pretty good burn buildup, from my experience, Piper might be able to make use of that to get disorder pops. Again, though, this team is going to lack a stun, so you're going to struggle a little bit with trying to get those stun windows going, so beware of that. And then as a special note, I just want to reiterate, she's going to have some inflexible team building early on because she has to work with a fire character, so beware of that. Von Lycaon. Ice, stun with the Victoria Housekeeping Service, and the subject of many a fan art. He's a stun character who largely tries to use his kit to kind of land a lot of really hard-hitting charged attacks. And more importantly, he's the only person who can apply a damage amplification when he hits a stunned enemy, which is big. As far as it goes, I've got two quick start teams for you. Korin and Sokaku. So Korin's another Victoria and Sokaku's an Ice. This is going to be a pretty standard damage support stun team, and having Sokaku here is going to make Von Lycaon a good sub DPS, I think. So your stunning phase is going to be more damaging than usual. And then the other one is Korin and Piper. You're going to be giving up your ice damage for this one. Von Lycaon is there to stun and do it quickly, as well as get that stun phase damage amp off. Apart from that, though, you're going to be very, very focused on using Korin and Piper to just beat the crap out of them. Note that if you pull him, there is a very strong argument for pulling for Ellen if you want to go all out in an ice team. Ellen is the game's first limited banner character. She is an ice character with Victoria as well. I'm not covering her because she's not a standard banner character, but just understand that between Von Lycaon, Ellen, and Sokaku, you're probably going to be looking at a very strong team, so do consider this. Alexandrina Sebastian, or as everyone is going to call her, Rina. She's an electric support with Victoria Housekeeping Service, and she's got a bit of a weird way of fighting. So instead of fighting herself, she'll send out these two little puppet bang boos that will be able to just do the attacking for her at a distance. When they're on field, there'll be a penetration ratio buff for everybody on the field, which is basically a defense ignore. Notably, I'm given to understand that the bang boos will stay on field after Rina leaves the field for a certain amount of time, so other characters can actually take advantage of that buff. As far as quick start team goes, I've only got one because Rina is extremely dependent on electric damage being on her team. Anby and Anton, where Anby will be doing your stun, Anton will be doing your damage. and Rina will be buffing Anton's damage output. Especially because, notably, a lot of her damage output support is dependent on the shock status. And that's what I've pretty much mentioned in the special note too. Some limitations in early team building. She might work well with Grace though if you manage to get her, but that's kind of a later consideration than early game. And the last thing I want to talk about, the gacha systems. Naturally, this is a gacha game. You're going to have to consider smartly how you invest your resources. And as far as this goes, most of the strategies that I give are going to be kind of in the F2P to what I'm going to call the fish territory as opposed to the whale territory. So light spending, little to basically anywhere from no to light spending. I'm not going to strategize for whales because that's a little bit of a different thing. But before I start talking strategies, I want to reiterate one of the biggest, the rule zero of gacha gaming. Do not spend money that you cannot afford to spend. I cannot say this loudly enough. I cannot say this enough times. Budget responsibly. Make sure you have enough for your essentials. This is a game. You need to eat more than you need to have a character. Characters will eventually rerun, and you can earn your pulls by playing. There will be almost no situations where you can truly permanently miss out on something. Be responsible, please. So, with that warning out of the way, I'll talk a little bit about strategy. So, let's just talk about some of the resources first. So, polychromes are your premium currency. For Genshin players, think Primogems. For Star Rail players, think Stellar Jades. You can purchase these with real money, and you can get them through gameplay. You can get a pretty decent amount through gameplay, as I've mentioned. And then master tapes and encrypted master tapes are the actual, pulls. This is the 1-to-1 ratio for pulls. Every master tape and encrypted master tape will cost you 160 polychromes. Now to discuss the 4 banners. You've got the stable channel, which we will refer to as the standard banner from here on out. This is a permanent banner which will basically have an equal chance of pulling everybody that was deemed part of the standard pool. You can get agents or W engine out of this one. It is highly randomized, and I, generally speaking, will not recommend trying to invest too hard into this one. But it is the only one that uses basic master tapes, which you will just get incidentally over time, so feel free to use them. That's what they're for. The exclusive channel is the limited banner. This will feature a specific character who will have a boosted drop rate, more specifically approximately 50%, whenever you get an S-rank character, and this uses the encrypted master tapes. The W engine channel will operate like the exclusive channel in that it will offer a boosted drop rate on a specific W engine that matches the currently running exclusive channel agent. This also uses the encrypted master tapes. The last one is the Bang Boo channel, which you'll use to get the Bang Boos that you can bring into combat. This one largely rotates between a set of 1 featured S and I think 3 featured A ranks. This will use a resource known as Boopons, which, as far as I understand it, you cannot buy these with real money at all. So, don't try. Now the pity system. So we do have at least some numerical confirmation as to where the hard pity lies because it's straight up on the UI. 90. You are guaranteed an S-rank agent or W engine at 90 pulls on a single banner. If the general patterns from Genshin and Star Rail hold, you can expect that the S-rank rate's going to start ramping up pretty hard once you hit 70 pulls on the banner. And then, for the exclusive channel in particular, we'll kind of talk about the concept of the 50-50. If you have not pulled at all, or if you pulled a featured character on the exclusive channel recently, your next S rank has a 50% chance of being the featured one and a 50% chance of being someone else. If you win this, that chance will reset for your next time around. If you lose it and you get a different character that's not the featured character, your next S rank pool will be guaranteed to be the featured character. and then it resets. Additionally, as far as I know, any built up pulls towards that 90 pity counter, when the featured agent rolls over and switches to the next one, you will keep that pity counter going in on the exclusive channel. So if you don't manage to get the character that you want from the exclusive channel this time, you can consider it you can consider that you at least have some consolation in the sense that you'll have progress towards the next character. It's not the greatest consolation in the world, but it's better than nothing. As far as an extra resource goes, I don't remember exactly what the name of the resource is, but every single time you do a signal search, you will get some kind of a fragment resource of sorts that will have its amount scale based on what exactly you pulled. So like 4-star things having pulled an A rank thing within that pull will give you more of these fragments than the B ranks, and then an S rank will give you even more of these. You can spend these in the store, in a special section of the store, to buy resources, or more importantly, extra master tapes and encrypted master tapes. My recommendation, stick to the master tapes and the encrypted master tapes. The resources can be tempting because you might want to build somebody faster, but think about the fact that you are losing pulls every single time you do it. Focus on the tapes. In addition to that, if you've played Genshin and Star Rail, you'll know that you can only buy 5 of each. You can only buy 5 of each pull resource in the store per month. Zenless Zone Zero, as far as I know, does not limit you per month. However, the costs will double after your first 5. Or rather, the first 5 are discounted, and then the cost goes back to normal. I highly recommend not passing that 5 limit as well, because you again are losing a lot of resources doing so. And now, the actual strategy for gacha planning, as far as I know it. If you want to go all in for an S-rank agent, there's sort of an order that you want to do this in. So the first thing that you want to pull for, obviously, is the agent. You don't have the agent, the rest of the things don't matter. Next, you want to pull the W engine, because that will represent probably the largest mechanical and power level change that you can get for your investment. After that, go for the extra copies of the agent for the talents, all the way up to the 6th one, because all of those are also smaller mechanical adjustments. And then finally, if you have been saving enough, or if you are willing to throw in enough resources for this, then you can go for the extra copies of the W engine, which are just straight stat increases. Generally speaking, this is highly unrealistic without spending very scary amounts of money. But if that's your prerogative, this is the order I would recommend. As for going all in for a standard S-rank agent or trying to snipe A-rank agents, I don't recommend this. All in is viable for a limited agent because of that 50-50 system I mentioned previously. Without that as a fallback, you are playing a much more dangerous game with RNG when you're going for standard S-rank agents and A-rank agents. It is very possible to win S-ranks constantly and never get who you want. Similarly, with A-rank agents, you can go many, many pulls without ever getting the person you want. So I highly recommend against trying this, especially because of the fact that you can get these things. You will get standard S-rank and A-rank agents just naturally over time, because you will always be generating more master tapes to work with. You will always be getting more A-rank members through the pulls. And you will inevitably lose 50-50s on the exclusive channel. It's a reality that we all have to deal with. But yeah, that's pretty much it for gacha stuff. So, with that in mind, I would like to thank you all for listening. And if you want to see me do a little more coverage of the game as it releases, I will be doing so on my Twitch, which you can find in the description. Again, I hope you all found this helpful, and I thank you all so much for watching. I wish you a good day, evening, afternoon, wherever you may be. Thank you so much.